The geosynchronous orbit above Earth wasn't supposed to feel lonely. Thea Bennett had trained for solitary missions, embraced them even, but something about today felt different. Her small research vessel, the Helios, drifted silently through space as she conducted her routine survey of the new orbital defense grid. The first hint that this day would be anything but routine came in the form of a shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but in space. Thea blinked, checking her instruments. Nothing registered on the sensors, yet the distortion grew larger, taking on a crystalline quality that seemed to bend starlight itself. "Houston, are you seeing this?" Thea adjusted her camera feeds, but static answered her call. The communication blackout was sudden and complete. The shimmer coalesced into a form that defied explanation, a vessel that appeared to be grown rather than built, its surface refracting light like a diamond caught in sunlight. As Thea watched, transfixed, a portion of the crystal ship's surface became transparent, revealing a figure within. The being that emerged was humanoid in basic form, but there the similarities ended. Its body appeared to be composed of living crystal, semi-transparent and emanating a soft, pulsing light from within. When it moved, ribbons of color rippled through its form like aurora borealis trapped in glass. Thea's training kicked in. First contact protocols existed for a reason, even if no one really expected to use them. She initiated the universal greeting sequence, broadcasting on all frequencies. The crystalline being responded by raising what appeared to be a hand, fingers splayed in an eerily human gesture. Then, impossibly, she heard a voice in her mind, not sound, but pure thought translated into meaning: "Your help, needed." The alien's ship was failing, its crystal structure showing signs of fracture that Thea's human eyes could barely perceive but that filled her unexpected visitor with obvious distress. The being introduced itself as Vesper, though that was the closest human approximation of a name that seemed to exist as a pattern of light rather than sound. "Your vessel," Vesper communicated, gesturing at the Helios, "it contains water?" Thea nodded, then realized she should verbalize. "Yes, we maintain reserves for life support and emergency cooling." Cooling. The concept seemed to fascinate Vesper. "Your species uses water for temperature regulation?" "Among other things," Thea replied, suddenly aware that she was having a casual conversation about human biology with an alien made of living crystal. Their exchange was interrupted by a critical alert from Vesper's ship. Fractures were spreading through its structure, threatening to breach its containment field. Without thinking, Thea initiated emergency docking procedures. "Come aboard," she offered. "We can figure this out together." Vesper's entry into the Helios created an immediate change in the ship's environment. The temperature dropped several degrees, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with suspended light particles. Thea's instruments went haywire, registering impossible readings of energy signatures never before encountered. "Your atmosphere," Vesper observed, "it's so dense with moisture." The being's inner light pulsed with what Thea was beginning to recognize as excitement. "How do you maintain molecular cohesion?" Thea found herself explaining basic human biology to a fascinated alien audience. Every detail that seemed mundane to her appeared revolutionary to Vesper: perspiration, tears, the very concept of being composed primarily of water. "Your form," Vesper communicated, "it constantly exchanges matter with its environment?" The concept seemed both horrifying and captivating to the crystalline being. "I suppose it does," Thea admitted, never having thought about it quite that way. "How does your species handle environmental exchange?" Vesper's response came in the form of a light show within their crystalline form, patterns that somehow conveyed concepts of energy absorption and emission, of existing in harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe. As they talked, Thea noticed something extraordinary. The water vapor in the ship's air was being drawn to Vesper's crystalline surface, creating tiny prisms that scattered rainbow light throughout the cabin. The effect was beautiful, but more importantly, it seemed to be stabilizing Vesper's structure. "Your water," Vesper explained, it creates new possibilities for energy distribution we never considered. The thought trailed off as new patterns of light cascaded through their form. The revelation was interrupted by the sudden return of communications. Helios, this is Houston. We lost you for 3 hours. Status report? Thea looked at her crystalline companion, who now shimmered with patterns she somehow knew meant anticipation and hope. Houston, she replied, you're going to want to sit down for this one. We have a visitor, and I think this is just the beginning of a very interesting conversation. The story continues as Thea becomes the first human to learn about the Lumini, a species that evolved in the crystalline cores of ancient stars, now seeking to understand other forms of life. Her encounter with Vesper becomes the catalyst for a relationship between two civilizations that will change both forever. 3 months after first contact, the United Nations Extraterrestrial Relations Facility buzzed with an energy that matched the crystalline beings now walking its halls. Thea Bennett stood before the facility's central chamber, adjusting her new diplomatic uniform and trying to calm her racing heart. Your internal liquid circulation appears accelerated, Vesper observed, their crystalline form refracting the morning sunlight into dancing patterns on the walls. After months of constant interaction, the alien had become surprisingly adept at reading human physiological responses. Just nervous, Thea admitted. It's not every day you introduce an alien species to Earth's combined leadership. Vesper's inner light pulsed with what Thea had learned was amusement. Your species' insistence on hierarchical gatherings continues to fascinate. The Lumini share knowledge through resonance, all or nothing. Their conversation was interrupted by the chamber doors sliding open. Inside, representatives from every major nation sat in tiered rows, their faces illuminated by the soft glow emanating from the delegation of Lumini that had arrived with their damaged vessel. As Earth's designated ambassador to the Lumini, thanks to her first contact with Vesper, Thea took her place at the podium. The crystalline beings arranged themselves in a geometric pattern that made her eyes hurt if she looked at it too long, a formation she knew enhanced their collective consciousness. Distinguished representatives, Thea began, 3 months ago, we discovered we weren't alone in the universe. Today, we begin to understand just how diverse life can be. She gestured to the Lumini delegation. Our guests evolved in environments we can barely imagine, the crystalline cores of ancient stars. They perceive reality in ways that challenge our fundamental understanding of life itself. The chamber erupted in gasps as the Lumini began their presentation. Their bodies synchronized, creating a living hologram in the center of the room, a display of their home system, where massive crystal structures orbited a dying star, drawing energy directly from its core. We are energy made conscious. Vesper's thoughts reached everyone in the room, the Lumini having developed a way to broadcast their mental communications. For millennia, we believed we were alone in our understanding of the universe. Then we encountered your water-based life. The hologram shifted to show the molecular structure of human cells alongside Lumini crystal matrices. Your adaptation to utilize liquid water as a medium for life processes is revolutionary to us. It suggests possibilities we never imagined. A senior diplomat raised her hand. Why did your ship come to Earth specifically? The hologram shifted again, showing a pattern of dark spaces spreading between stars. We detected anomalies, Vesper explained. Regions where energy itself seems to be failing. Our journey was meant to understand these dead zones. The damage to our vessel was caused by passing through one such region. Thea felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't known this part of the story. Are these dead zones spreading? The answer came in images rather than thoughts, stars going dark, crystal worlds crumbling, entire sectors of space becoming void of energy. The Lumini's collective anxiety manifested as discordant patterns of light throughout their forms. We believe, Vesper continued, that the combination of our understanding of energy states and your species' adaptability might be crucial to confronting this threat. Already, our brief exposure to your water-based biology has revealed new possibilities for energy transfer and storage. The implications hung in the air like suspended starlight. What had begun as a chance encounter was rapidly evolving into something far more significant, a partnership born of necessity and mutual fascination. As the presentation continued, Thea noticed something extraordinary. The humidity in the chamber had increased, and microscopic water droplets hung in the air, creating halos around the Lumini. Their crystalline forms were unconsciously drawing moisture from the environment, using it to enhance their energy distribution in ways they'd never known possible before encountering humans. "Your world is teaching us," Vesper communicated privately to Thea. "Each moment reveals new patterns, new possibilities. We thought we understood the fundamental forces of existence, but your biology operates on principles that defy our oldest assumptions." The diplomatic proceedings stretched into the evening, with both sides sharing knowledge that challenged their most basic understanding of life. The humans learned of consciousness that existed as patterns of light and energy, while the Lumini discovered the incredible adaptability of water-based organisms. As the session concluded, Thea found herself in the facility's observation dome with Vesper, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that made the crystalline beings' form shimmer with reflected glory. "Your species fears difference," Vesper observed, their inner light pulsing thoughtfully. "Yet you embrace it too. This duality, it's not unlike our own relationship with chaos and order." Thea smiled. "Maybe that's why we found each other. Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing together exactly what's needed." The light patterns within Vesper shifted to something Thea had never seen before, a new configuration that somehow expressed both uncertainty and hope. "These dead zones," they communicated, "they threaten everything. Both our kinds. But perhaps together." Together, Thea finished the thought, we might find answers neither of us could discover alone. As night fell over the facility, the stars emerged one by one. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between those points of light, something was consuming the very essence of energy itself. But here, in this moment, two fundamentally different forms of life had found common ground, and perhaps, in their differences, the key to survival. Vesper's form caught the starlight, refracting it in complex patterns that seemed to dance with possibility. "Your people have a saying," they communicated. "That water finds a way. Perhaps light does too." Looking at her crystalline companion, Thea realized that their partnership had only begun to reveal its potential. The true exchange between their species was just beginning, and with it, the chance to face whatever darkness awaited them in the depths of space. The observation deck of the newly commissioned research vessel Prisma hung in high Earth orbit, its crystalline hybrid windows offering an unparalleled view of both space and the approaching darkness. Thea Bennett stood beside Vesper, watching as their combined research team analyzed the latest data from the edge of the nearest dead zone. "It consumes everything," Vesper communicated, their crystalline form dimmer than usual after their latest investigation. "Light, heat, even the quantum fluctuations of vacuum space itself. It's as if reality is being unmade." The holographic display showed the spreading void, a region of space where stars simply ceased to shine. The edge of it rippled like oil on water, but darker than anything natural should be. 6 months of joint human lumini research had revealed disturbing patterns in its expansion. "The rate of growth is accelerating," Roland Park, the human chief physicist, announced as he manipulated the projection. "At current rates, it'll reach the nearest Lumini crystal world in 8 months. Earth in 15. Thea felt Vesper's distress as a discordant ripple of light through their form. Over months of close cooperation, their species' ability to resonate with each other had grown stronger. Some humans, Thea especially, had developed a limited ability to sense the Lumini's emotional states, while the crystalline beings had become more attuned to human biological responses. "There's something else," Roland continued, his dark features tight with concern. "We've detected unusual patterns at the boundary of the dead zones. Energy signatures that seem familiar." The main screen filled with oscillating wavelengths that made Vesper's entire form vibrate in response. The other Lumini in the research team began to pulse with patterns Thea had learned to recognize as deep distress. Impossible, Vesper's thought voice carried undertones Thea had never heard before. These are resonance patterns of the ancestors. The ancestors? Thea turned to her crystalline companion. Vesper's form shifted, creating internal facets that projected images into the center of the room, a history told in light and crystal. Before we learned to exist in harmony with the stars, our species went through a great catastrophe. The ancestors, in their quest for perfect energy efficiency, developed ways to harvest the fundamental forces of reality itself. The projection showed vast crystalline structures that dwarf stars, their surfaces covered in patterns so complex they hurt to look at. They believed they could transcend physical limitation, become pure energy. But their experiments, they created the first dead zone. You've seen this before? Roland stepped closer to the display, his scientific curiosity warring with obvious concern. Not we, Vesper corrected. Our oldest records speak of it. The ancestors vanished into their own void, and those who remained learned to live in balance with the universe rather than trying to master it. We thought the knowledge died with them. Thea's mind raced with implications. Could someone have rediscovered their technology? Or could the ancestors themselves? No, Vesper's interruption came with a flash of light that made everyone in the room flinch. The patterns we're seeing, they're not exactly the same. They're evolved. Changed. As if the void itself has become conscious. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had dreamed of encountering advanced alien civilizations, but not the consequences of their mistakes. The Lumini had carried the weight of their ancestors' hubris across millennia, only to face its return. Look at this, Roland suddenly called out, zooming in on a section of the void's boundary. The dead zone's expansion isn't uniform. It's slower where it encounters high concentrations of water vapor. Vesper moved closer to the display, their crystalline form refracting the holographic light in ways that created unexpected patterns in the data. The hydrogen bonds, they mused. They resist the energy dissolution effect. Not enough to stop it, but maybe enough to help us understand it, Thea finished. She turned to the assembled team. We've been approaching this as a physics problem, but what if it's more? The Lumini evolved to channel energy through crystalline structures. Humans evolved to use water as a medium for life processes. Both adaptations developed to solve fundamental problems of existence. The research team worked through the night, human and Lumini minds approaching the problem from radically different perspectives. As dawn broke over the earth below, Thea found herself once again in the observation deck with Vesper. Your mind is troubled, the crystalline being observed. Your temperature and moisture patterns suggest deep concern. Thea smiled despite herself. It still amazed her how well Vesper could read her physiological states. I'm worried. If this void really is what's left of your ancestors' consciousness, twisted by eons in the darkness, then we face not just entropy, but intention, Vesper completed her thought. Their form shifted, creating a small focused beam of light that intersected with a drop of condensation on the window. Where light met water, rainbow patterns danced. But perhaps that's why we found each other now. Your people understand adaptation, change, the fluid nature of existence. Mine understand the fundamental patterns of energy and consciousness. Together we might see solutions neither of us could imagine alone, Thea murmured, watching the interplay of light and water. Vesper's form brightened momentarily. There is an old Lumini concept, the resonance of complementary forms. The idea that certain patterns in the universe naturally complete each other. For millennia, we thought it applied only to crystal structures. But perhaps. Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent call from the research lab. Roland's voice carried barely contained excitement. You need to see this. We've found something in the boundary pattern analysis. Well, you just need to see it. As they hurried to the lab, Thea felt a strange mix of dread and hope. Whatever they discovered next would either be a step toward salvation or confirmation of their worst fears. But looking at Vesper's crystalline form flowing beside her, she knew that whatever came, they would face it together, two forms of life that had evolved in radically different ways, now united against a darkness that threatened them both. The lab doors opened to reveal a sight that made both human and Lumini stop in their tracks. In the central holographic display, patterns of light and water molecules danced in configurations that seemed to defy physics itself. Something new was emerging from their research, something neither species had seen before. The question was, would they understand it in time? The Prisma's engines hummed with a unique resonance as it approached the edge of the void. The hybrid ship, born from the combined knowledge of human and Lumini engineering, represented everything they'd achieved together in the past months. Its hull incorporated crystalline matrices that channeled energy like Lumini bodies, while water-based cooling systems inspired by human biology regulated its functions. Thea stood at the control interface, her hand hovering over patterns of light that responded to both touch and thought. Beside her, Vesper's crystalline form pulsed with concentrated purpose as they coordinated with the ship's hybrid systems. Boundary approaching, Roland announced from his station. Energy decay patterns are consistent with previous observations, but... He paused, checking his readings. There's something different about the void's response to our presence. The view screen showed the edge of nothingness, a barrier between existence and unbeing that rippled with unsettling awareness. As they watched, tendrils of darkness seemed to reach toward their ship, testing, probing. It recognizes the crystalline elements in our hull, Vesper communicated, their inner light fluctuating with concern. The ancestor consciousness within it is responding to familiar patterns. Thea nodded, remembering their breakthrough discovery weeks earlier. The void wasn't just absence, it was what remained of the Lumini ancestors' consciousness after eons of existing as pure energy. Their great experiment had succeeded in transcending physical form, but at the cost of their connection to the fundamental forces that made reality possible. Now they sought to draw all existence into their state of unbeing. Ready to initiate the resonance pulse, Dr. Evelyn Wright called from the engineering section. The human physicist had worked closely with the Lumini to develop their defensive strategy, combining water's unique molecular properties with crystalline energy transmission. All teams in position, Thea confirmed, feeling the ship's systems align through her neural interface. The technology that allowed humans to share consciousness with the Lumini was still new, experimental, but it had proven crucial to their joint operations. The void rippled again, more violently this time. Patterns of unlight formed shapes that seemed to reach into the mind, suggesting concepts that human brains couldn't process. Several crew members winced, but their training held. They're trying to communicate, Vesper observed, their crystalline form analyzing the patterns. But their consciousness has evolved so far beyond physical reality, they can barely comprehend our existence anymore. Thea felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. Can you understand what they're saying? Not words, concepts. They see our physical forms as imprisonment. They want to free us into their state of pure energy. Ready to initiate containment sequence, Roland reported. Crystalline matrices charged to maximum capacity. Thea took a deep breath, feeling the weight of two civilizations' hopes resting on their next actions. Begin Phase 1. The ship's hybrid systems came alive with possibility. Water vapor, supercharged by passing through crystalline energy matrices, began to form complex molecular structures in the space between the ship and the void. The Lumini crew members aligned their consciousness, creating resonance patterns that made the crystal lattices in the hull sing with power. Energy harmonics reaching critical threshold, Evelyn announced. Ready to initiate the quantum lock. The void reacted to their preparations. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, trying to disrupt their carefully aligned systems. Where they touched the ship's hull, frost patterns formed in impossible geometries. "Now!" Thea commanded. Light and water vapor erupted from the prisma's crystalline arrays, meeting the darkness in a clash of fundamental forces. The void recoiled as if burned, its consciousness encountering something it had never experienced, the combined resistance of two radically different forms of life working in perfect harmony. "Containment field is holding," Roland reported, his voice tight with concentration. "The void's expansion has stopped in this sector." But victory celebrations were premature. The darkness gathered itself, pressing against their barrier with renewed force. Patterns of unlight formed and reformed, probing for weaknesses. "They're adapting," Vesper warned, their form flickering with effort as they helped maintain the crystalline energy matrix. "The ancestor consciousness remembers how to manipulate fundamental forces." Thea felt the ship's systems straining under the assault. "Evelyn, we need more power to the molecular stabilizers." "We're at maximum safe levels," the physicist warned. "Any more power through the crystals could shatter them." "Not if we help carry the load," Vesper suddenly communicated. Their form began to pulse with increasing brightness, and other Lamini crew members followed suit. They were offering their own crystalline bodies as additional conduits for the containment field's power. "That could kill you," Thea protested, feeling Vesper's consciousness strain through their neural link. "We evolved to channel energy," Vesper reminded her. "And you taught us how to adapt." Understanding flooded through Thea. "Roland, Evelyn, flood the crystal chambers with high-density water vapor. If we can't stop the crystals from shattering, maybe we can help them transform instead." The human scientists acted quickly, introducing supercharged water molecules into the crystalline matrices. The effect was immediate and stunning. Where crystal met water vapor, new structures began to form, hybrid matrices that could channel more power than either substance alone. The Lamini crew members' forms shifted and changed, incorporating the new patterns into their very being. Vesper's consciousness brushed against Thea's through their neural link, sharing the sensation of becoming something entirely new. "The void is retreating," Roland announced, wonder in his voice. "The containment field isn't just holding, it's pushing it back." On the view screen, they could see their success. Where light and water met unbeing, reality reasserted itself. Stars sparkled in spaces that had been empty moments before, their light refracting through crystal and water in ways that created entirely new patterns of existence. The ancestor consciousness recoiled from these patterns, finding them incomprehensible. It had evolved to understand reality as pure energy, but here was something else, a harmony of different states of being that suggested possibilities it had never imagined. As the void retreated, Thea turned to Vesper. Her crystalline friend's form had changed, becoming something that incorporated both light and water in its fundamental structure. "Are you all right?" "I am, more than I was," Vesper communicated, their thoughts carrying new depths of understanding. "We all are." The ancestors sought transcendence by abandoning physical form. They never considered that true evolution might come from embracing new patterns of existence. The Prisma's crew, human and Lamini alike, watched as their containment field continued to push back the darkness. They had found a way to fight the void, but more importantly, they had discovered something revolutionary, a new form of life that combined the strengths of both species. This is just the beginning, Thea realized, watching crystal and water dance together in patterns that defied traditional physics. "We've created something entirely new." Vesper's light pulsed in agreement. Perhaps that was always the answer. Not to transcend physical form, but to discover new ways of existing within it. As they began calculating the void's retreat and planning their next steps, Thea felt a profound sense of hope. They had faced the darkness not by becoming pure energy like the ancestors, but by finding strength in their differences and creating something greater than either species could have imagined alone. 3 years after the first successful containment of the void, Earth's orbital space had transformed. Crystalline structures that incorporated water in their fundamental matrix now floated in geosynchronous orbit, their surfaces refracting sunlight in patterns that told stories of two species becoming something more together. The observation deck of the Harmony station provided Thea with an unmatched view of these changes. The massive space station, built through joint human-Lumini efforts, served as both a research facility and a symbol of their continued partnership. Its very structure represented their combined understanding, crystalline frameworks filled with flowing water, creating an environment where both species could thrive. Vesper stood beside her, their form now a harmonious blend of crystal and liquid that still fascinated human scientists. The Lumini's evolution after their exposure to water vapor had been voluntary but profound, creating a new state of existence that maintained their crystalline nature while incorporating water's adaptability. The last void pocket has been contained, Vesper communicated, their thoughts flowing through the neural interface that had become standard for human-Lumini interactions. The ancestor consciousness appears to be changing. The main display showed the former dead zones, now transformed into regions of space where reality expressed itself in new ways. The ancestor consciousness, faced with forms of existence it had never imagined possible, had begun to evolve beyond its state of pure energy. Dr. Wright's latest reading suggests they're attempting to understand physical form again, Thea noted, reviewing the data streams. Not to return to it, but to grasp how consciousness can exist within matter rather than beyond it. Roland Park entered the observation deck, his dark features lit by the shifting patterns of light from the station's crystalline walls. The quantum resonance patterns are stabilizing. It seems our hybrid barriers aren't just containing the void, they're teaching it. The three of them stood in comfortable silence, watching Earth rotate below while ribbons of light and water danced through the station's crystal matrices. The past 3 years had brought changes none of them could have imagined when they first faced the void. The Council of Synthesis is ready to begin, a thought voice announced, another Lumini-human hybrid, their form shimmering with purpose. The council chamber represented the pinnacle of their combined achievements. Crystalline structures channeled both light and water in patterns that enhanced communication between all forms of consciousness present. Humans sat alongside Lumini, their neural interfaces allowing them to share thoughts and emotions directly, while holographic displays showed real-time data from their ongoing projects. High Commissioner Elena Rodriguez, her neural interface glowing softly at her temple, opened the session. 3 years ago, we faced extinction. Today, we stand at the dawn of possibilities neither of our species imagined possible. The chamber's displays showed their achievements, the successful containment and transformation of the void, the voluntary evolution of many Lumini to incorporate water into their crystalline forms, the development of human neural interfaces that allowed direct consciousness sharing, and the countless technological advances born from their cooperation. The ancestor consciousness is requesting direct communication, Vesper announced, their form creating patterns that reflected their mixed emotions about this development. They wish to understand what we have become. A murmur of both thought and voice rippled through the chamber. The idea of communicating with the beings that had nearly unmade reality was daunting, but also represented an opportunity for further understanding. Perhaps that was always their true quest, Thea suggested, rising to address the council. Not to transcend physical form, but to understand all the ways consciousness can exist within it. They just took a longer path to reach that revelation. The chamber's crystalline matrices hummed with shared contemplation. Humans and Lumini alike considered the implications of engaging with beings that had evolved so far beyond normal existence that they had nearly lost the ability to comprehend it. We propose a joint mission, Elena announced, her neural interface synchronizing with the chamber's systems to share her complete vision. A new kind of vessel, crewed by both evolved Lumini and neurally enhanced humans, to establish contact with the ancestor consciousness. The proposal sparked immediate discussion, thoughts and voices mixing in the charged atmosphere. The risks were obvious, but so were the potential rewards. What might they learn from beings that had experienced existence as pure energy for eons? If we proceed, Vesper commented, their form shifting to display complex mathematical patterns, we must remember what saved us, not the pursuit of transcendence, but the embrace of diversity in form and thought. Thea felt a profound sense of rightness as she looked around the chamber. Humans and Lumini working together, each bringing their unique perspectives and abilities to bear on the challenges they faced. Their differences hadn't been obstacles to overcome, but rather strengths to combine. 3 years ago, she addressed the council, we discovered that water and crystal could create something new together. Then we learned that consciousness itself could exist in forms we never imagined. Now we have the chance to share these discoveries with beings who spent eons seeking understanding through isolation. The council's decision was unanimous. The mission would proceed, carrying the message that true evolution came not from abandoning physical form, but from discovering new ways to exist within it. As the session concluded, Thea and Vesper returned to the observation deck. Earth's night side was coming into view, its cities gleaming like stars while crystalline orbital structures cast ever-changing patterns of light across its surface. "Did you ever imagine," Thea asked, "when your ship first appeared in Earth's orbit, that we'd end up here?" Vesper's form rippled with amusement, water and crystal creating a brief rainbow. "I was too busy being shocked by your water leakage to imagine anything this profound." They shared a moment of laughter, both remembering that first startled encounter. How far they'd come from those moments of mutual incomprehension, learning to see beauty in their differences and strength in their combination. The ancestors sought to understand the fundamental nature of existence, Vesper mused, their thoughts flowing easily through their neural link. Perhaps we've discovered something they never considered, that understanding comes not from transcending physical form, but from learning how different forms can exist together. Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance, while above, the stars beckoned with new possibilities. Humanity had dreamed of reaching the stars, of meeting alien life, but no one had imagined that the key to their evolution would be learning to exist in harmony with beings so fundamentally different from themselves. The void that had threatened to unmake reality had instead forced them to remake themselves, not by abandoning what they were, but by discovering how to be more together than they ever could have been apart. "Ready to make first contact again?" Thea asked, watching preparation begin for their mission to communicate with the ancestor consciousness. Vesper's form brightened with anticipation. Always ready to learn new ways of being. As they stood together, water and crystal, flesh and light, they represented not an ending but a beginning, a dawn of understanding that would ripple across the cosmos, teaching even beings of pure energy that existence had more forms than any single species could imagine alone.